So, far away Nisha, we're going to have a fun one trying to pronounce this guy's name, aren't we?
Oh, as always.
Sorry, guys. The subtle, understated art of not giving a fuck is one that has been mastered by only a few select individuals throughout history. Among this pantheon of non-fuck-giving heroes, Eugen Sandow, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, likely stands as the most physically impressive. In fact, that's hardly surprising when you consider that he is often known as the father of modern bodybuilding.
So Sandow, hopefully that's pronounced correctly, is known as the father of modern bodybuilding.
Yes, and that is the sphere of interest he is largely known, but due to the nicheness of bodybuilding as like a career, Eugene Sandow is not largely known outside of that world, except to individuals who are interested in researching history and may not, have the physique of a bodybuilder. But I'd like to, he's mostly known for his feats of prodigious physical strength, but mostly for his chiseled, near Adonis-like physique.
So we'll talk about the first thing that you mentioned, and that's his strength.
So yes, Sandow is likely one of the strongest human beings to have ever lived, and owing to the fact he invented bodybuilding, it wasn't really a career option when he was alive in the 19th century. So instead, he earned his keep as a strongman. And like many strongmen of the age, he earned his money by wowing crowds with prodigious feats of physical strength.
I'm assuming you've got many examples of that?
Yeah, there'll no doubt be a little fact bar below me, listing some of the impressive feats of strength credited to Sandow. But a couple of my favourites are breaking steel chains by flexing his chest, performing a perfect backflip while holding a 50-pound barbell in each hand.
Holy shit.
And being able to lift up a weight that an ordinary man could barely get off the ground with two hands, clean above his head with one.
Yeah, this is all impressive, but I've heard of many other strongmen doing those sorts of things anyway.
Yeah, they were par for the course for any strongman looking to earn money around the time Sandow was alive. And what set him apart from the other strongmen doing basically the same act, if not better, because some of these men could lift more weight than him, was his chiseled Adonis-like physique, which he honed to perfection. Many of the strongmen who were performing these feats of strength were large, barrel-chested, just hunks of meat, and Sandow was not like that at all, and he was in fact quite small for a strongman. But what set him apart, as I said, was his almost perfect chiseled physique, which he worked every single day to something known as the Grecian ideal, which basically means that he worked out his body to give him the proportions and musculature. Damn it! I always get that word. Always catch me up.
It's a hard word.
The physique and musculature of a Greek statue. So think the David or something like that.
Oh God, yeah. He's trying to get the perfect body.
Essentially, yes, and he did market himself as the perfect man, because when he was performing, he did look like a Greek statue, because something he liked to do before his shows was cover himself in white powder and then pose in front of a black curtain to complete the look.
Yeah.
And it's noted that many people would come to his shows not to see his feats of strength, but simply to marvel at his body, because nobody back then had ever seen anybody that buff or that in shape. And you think he's doing these impressive feats of strength that are as good as, if not better, than the feats of strength seen by other strongmen, but he also looked like a living statue, which just set him apart and made him much more interesting to see. And before we move on, there are many different opinions on what the ideal body type is, because attraction is a very personal thing. So to you, Nisha, who do you think has the perfect physique? I'm intrigued in it, because I can open up the floor and I'll say that I think it's Bruce Lee. And because when you look at pictures and clips of him, when he was at the apex of his career, you look at him and go, he barely looks human anymore. He might as well be One Punch Man. He looks like someone drew him.
God.
And there's all these amazing quotes from people who met him. There's one from his wife who said, oh yeah, touching Bruce was like touching warm marble.
Oh God.
Because he just felt like he was rock solid, but you could feel that he was human because he was warm. It's what do you do?
I find it really hard to narrow it down to one person, but celebs like Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pratt, people just look after themselves and work out, but I don't like overly buff men, like too much muscle. It's just, I don't like it.
So you pick Chris Hemsworth.
I don't mind a bit of a dad bod,
Just
you know.
Just the entire chicken.
I know, but you get people like The Rock and stuff like that. You just
there is like an extra level of that, and that's where
Yeah.
you get bodybuilders now. Like your John Cena's and stuff like that, where like the nature of their profession requires them to be like, you know, so large that they're no longer in proportion. And that's something that Sandow sought to avoid. And he never wanted to get any one muscle group on his body to be too big and not in proportion with the rest of his body, which admittedly like limited the level of strength that he had. But he nonetheless endeavoured to become one of the strongest men who'd ever lived while maintaining those proportions.
So where does him not giving an actual fuck come into this?
Well, Sandow didn't care who he stepped on to prove that he was one of the strongest men on the planet. For example, there was a popular boast from strongmen back when Sandow would perform to ask someone in the crowd, would you like to try and replicate the feat that I have just done for you, to show how much stronger they were than the average man. So what Sandow would do when he entered a new city and he wanted to, like, you know, build up some word of mouth support for his new act, he would go to one of these shows in disguise. And when I say in disguise, I mean he had specially constructed suits that had looser than average seams that was just a little bit too tight for him constructed that he would wear. He would go to these shows, wait for the strongman to make this boast, go up on stage, top their act, and then flex so his suit burst off.
Yeah,
That's a real thing he did.
He did the Hulk.
He did the whole, he'd Hulk out. Just for a second. Imagine it's the 19th century, you're sat there and you're watching this just huge man who looks like a fucking egg lifting up like some massive barbell. And then like he asks some like large men in the crowd to do it and they can't do it. This tiny little man in a business suit comes out, like lifts up the barbell with no effort whatsoever, and then flexes so hard all his clothes fall off. You're like, the fuck is going on? Like, you go mad? It's one of those things that's so ridiculous that I can't think of a real life example of it happening. And the only like live action examples of it happening are the world of wrestling, where you have like Hulk Hogan who would like rip his shirt off or his vest.
Yeah.
Or you have like The Rock in Fast and Furious flexing a cast off his arm.
I was just thinking of that scene, I think it's in The Simpsons, where Ned Flanders rips off his shirt and he's just got abs.
Yeah, he's just super buff. That reminds me a little bit though, that speaking of like clothes that's a little bit too tight, that great scene in The Office where Michael's wearing the shirt, it's like it's the European cut. And he's wearing like the most tight shirt you've ever seen. But have you ever seen any like the behind the scenes stuff on that?
No, I've not, but that sounds
Where
fun.
Steve Carell, he was exercising like a madman at the time, and he was really, really in shape. And the joke was going to be that he's wearing this tight shirt, but like he's a little bit too flubby for it. But Steve Carell was like super fucking ripped. And behind the scenes, everyone's like, he looks so good in that shirt, and we've got to like make fun of him for wearing it.
Yes, it's too tight.
Why is it so tight?
What's a European cut?
It just looks bad.
Right, so do you have any other examples of him not giving a fuck?
I do, and they mostly revolve around him just wanting to promote his own show above anything else. And there's a great story about when Sandow, I think, arrived in Amsterdam, and he heard through the grapevine the various gyms he was going to, so, you know, to maintain his physique, that a common thing for strong men in the city to do was go to these grip machines, which were a test of strength for the average man. And it was apparently a competition of sorts for strong men to go to these and just try and set the highest score they could. And when Sandow heard this, he snuck out under the cover of night and went to every single one in the city and broke it through sheer strength, and then went to the police and turned himself in. And when the police asked him, we don't believe that any one man could have broken all of them in one night, and we certainly don't believe that you did so through pure strength. It was clearly vandals. Why are you admitting to this? To which Sandow responded by walking over to a policeman and picking him up with one hand. At which point the police were like, I don't think we're going to arrest you today. And Sandow asked them, oh, that's nice. Would you like to just confirm what I did to the papers? And they're like, yeah, I guess we better. And just couldn't.
Oh my god.
So Nisha, since we've been talking about like a large buff man today who was famous for his various feats of strength, what's the strongest you have ever felt?
Well, I always feel really strong whenever my mum gives me a jar to open. And you just
The classic ones.
pop it open,
Ah.
yep.
I've never had that. No one's ever given me the jar, 'cause my mum was like fucking just on it with those jars. She got those Madonna hands, like the because she works she works with her hands. Oh god, that's probably not a good thing to say. Some joke can be made about that right now. She's she's a care nurse, so she's always like lifting people and hoisting people up into the air. So like she's like fucking on it. But I think the weakest I felt is last year, in fact, when I was it was at my peak of going to the gym, which I can't do anymore because fucking Rona stopped it. And all throughout my childhood, my dad had these weights in his room that, to me as a child, these things might as well be fucking dwarf stars. No one can move these weights. And I was always astounded as a kid to see my dad just lift these weights up effortlessly.
Yeah.
And I visited my dad and I moved into a new house and I saw them weights. The weights that I saw as a kid, like, I reckon I can lift them now. I looked at my dad, he's a bit older now, he's like 50 odd years old. I'm like, I reckon now is the time I can top my dad. And I went up to his weights and I lifted one up and I was thinking, all my confidence immediately went out as soon as I lifted it and went, to try to curl it. Because I couldn't fucking move it 1 inch. My dad heard this, walked in, picked up both and just did 20 perfect reps and put them back down. It was like, oh no! It's like, no! I've trained for so long.
That's devastating.
It's just like, I was so deflated. It's like, what have I even done? What is the point?
Oh god, I think I feel my weakest today because yesterday I went on a 5-hour walk. So like around some fields, up some hills and stuff like that, and climbed a few rocks. And obviously during lockdown, I've not really been that active. I've been mainly sat at the computer. So yeah, my body is not okay today.
It was just not having it.
I just went to the shop earlier and I was hobbling to get to the shop.
Because gyms here have just started opening again, so I've been having to go to mine really early in the morning when no one's there in a mask. And I'll tell you now, doing fucking squats in a mask, you can't. You like look at yourself during the mirror that they have there that people are supposed to like flex in. I'm like, why are you showing me this? Like, all I see is failure. It's like, nah. This is so bad. It's the worst.